Welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast, the photo imaging industry's leading news source. Here's your host, Gary Pageau.
The Dead Pixel Society podcast is brought to you by MediaClip, Photo Finale, and Advertech Printing. Hello again and welcome to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. I'm your host, Gary Pageau, and today we're joined by Pamela Vachon, the Vice President Marketing Operations for Zenfolio, and Keith Barraclough, the CTO and Head of Product. Hi, Pamela. Hi, Keith. How are you today?
Doing well, thanks.
Good, thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, for the 12 people who aren't familiar with Zenfolio, can you share with us a little bit about the company and your roles within it?
So, Zenfolio is a website and kind of complete workflow provider for photographers. Everything from proofing to ordering and even workflows such as taking client bookings. Mm-hmm. I've been at Zenfolio for about 10 years, and I'm currently the Vice President of Marketing Operations. I head up part of marketing and also the customer support and customer success groups. I kind of make sure that all of our marketing technology is working for the marketing team, but also make sure that the support and success teams are doing everything they can to help our photographers be more successful.
Okay, and Keith?
And my job is to make Pam successful. But beyond that, obviously through Pam to make all our photographers successful. And my role has been to build out the platforms that support our photographers, all the services that are necessary for them, mm-hmm. and then the features and functions that are needed for website creation, commerce, mm-hmm. and enabling our photographers to do what they do best, which is take photos and get those photos out to their prospects, their customers as quickly as possible, and to help them grow their business in general. So, that's my role.
So we're here to discuss a new survey that you've released talking about the impact of COVID on photographers. But this isn't the first of these type market surveys you released to the industry. Can you talk a little bit about why Zenfolio is conducting these surveys and then sharing the results so widely to everyone?
Absolutely. This started, back in late winter of 2021. Mm-hmm. And we were trying to understand the impact we'd seen. We were riding this roller coaster mm-hmm. of COVID, of things are open, things are closed, people are having photos, people aren't. So we conducted one in the late winter. We followed it up with one in the spring mm-hmm. because we had seen such a shift. We had seen such a surge in e-commerce activity. We really wanted to understand both for our business, right. but also for our photographers' right. businesses. So how are they adapting? Can we educate photographers on what other photographers are doing to be successful during these really kind of tumultuous times? And with this latest survey, we really expanded the questions because we were all hopeful that one day kind of COVID is maybe not behind us, but maybe just kind of like part of our normal operating environment. But we want to start understanding things more about gear and what types of clients they have and how their clients find them so that we can then disseminate that information and provide education to photographers that are out there or up and coming photographers.
And how was the survey conducted?
So we did the survey in a few parts. We did this through our Zenfolio newsletters, our Format newsletters. Our Format is the company in Canada that we purchased in November. And I believe we also did a Flipboard partnership for the survey as well.
So you tried to reach beyond the Zenfolio customer base.
We really wanted to. The first couple surveys kind of ended up being really centralized on the Zenfolio customer base. And we wanted to make sure that we were expanding beyond that. Mm-hmm. There are people outside of the kind of the wedding and portrait and, some of the school and sports photography genres that we really want to reach and understand those as well.
So according to the recap I'm seeing here, you've got about 3,400 photographers. That's pretty good. That's a pretty decent sized sample for a survey like this. Tell us a little bit about the first and second surveys you've done. Kind of what were the major elements you learned from that and how you've acted on them? Maybe that's a Keith question in terms of what you've learned from that and how you've incorporated some of those things into Zenfolio so far.
The surveys really helped us focus on what was going to help bring the photographers back as quickly as possible, right? And we, during the COVID period, we were also midway through building out a new platform that has been servicing our photographers.
Sure.
In some ways we had that, I wouldn't say luxury, but at least that ability to take in this information and look carefully about how we launched the new tiers of service and how we would, focus them around where the growth was going to come. And from what we saw was obviously total downturn in wedding and event photography. And this year we saw a projection, which we are seeing in real time going on right now, where weddings and higher volume event photography is growing rapidly. And, our stats are showing us that our product is actually performing right now at near peak season levels, even though we are, much earlier than we would normally be in the seasonality of weddings and high volume photography. So for us, we were able to say, okay, what are the things that are going to help differentiate this wave as it comes back? And in the meantime, what could we do to support the photographers while they were waiting for the wedding season to actually start, a year later.
Right.
And we did a lot of work around supporting portrait photographers and helping them. We actually, and Pam can talk to this a little more, we had all sorts of interesting scenarios where photographers were finding new and interesting ways to engage in a COVID safe way, in taking everything from family photos on porches where they were literally safely distanced. And we were then trying to make sure that we were supporting portraiture as we were rolling out the new platform and, passing that information back to the photographers to give them ideas to inspire them on how they could continue to shoot and find ways to make their business work during COVID. So it was a good thing for us to take a step back and look at how we were going to support them as they came out and then prioritize features a little bit to help that.
Sure. So Pam, can you talk a little bit about that, what Keith brought up?
Sure. So, some of the things that we were looking at with supporting these photographers, way in the early times when pretty much everybody was just hunkered down in their homes, capitalizing on people missing their family and wanting to look back at old memories was a really big thing. So making, those old archived images available for sale again, and people having the opportunity to purchase again, kind of really helped bolster photographers while they weren't actively shooting. Making sure that our booking and calendaring service was primed and ready to go when this wedding boom happened is hugely critical, because now these photographers are getting, you've seen the articles talking about this year is a wedding boom that we've never seen before. And so making sure that photographers are ready to kind of accept that business, get that scheduled, and, then seamlessly deliver the images and sell at the print labs was, really critical for the success of these photographers for this summer and fall.
I really think the COVID pandemic, which, technically we're still in, but for the most part, most people are operating business as usual with, different cases here and there. But the difference, I think, is it like Keith said, it gave photographers themselves time to reevaluate their businesses. And many of them, like you said, did porch shoots and maybe expanded into different types of photography. Like I've heard of, portrait photographers in it, they started doing travel and nature because, started building up their stock portfolios and started looking at different ways they could adapt their business. Do you think that behavior is going to carry on? Because one thing I've suspected is that COVID is a game changer in the sense it kicked some people in the butt that if they weren't online and mobile, they had to get there, right, to reach people. And now they're going to stay there. They're not going to go back. Yeah,
I would say, we saw different genres that saw growth, right? One was food services and food shoots. And, food delivery services went through the roof, right? Because of COVID. They're not going backwards. Right. That business is here to stay. So therefore, visual representation of your menu, really important for online services. So we saw growth in that segment. We're going to continue to see that digital delivery is just paramount for everything now. We've seen Zoom come as part of wedding packages.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen video, not just in the traditional sense of the wedding video, but the sharing of the experience real time and after the experience to a distributed audience has now become a part of wedding packages.
Right.
So yeah, the COVID has changed things in a way that, you know, and has accelerated things, I would say, to your point, Gary, where, you know, mobile is everything now. You know, mobile consumption of the photographer's products is significantly higher than it's ever been before. We saw it boom again with COVID. And, you know, that one of the reasons we built our new platform was for the delivery to end consumers on mobile devices is critical. And that's never going to go backwards. That's going to continue forwards now.
Pam, do you want to jump on that?
Yeah, I mean, also the acceleration of trends that we already saw, such as selling digital downloads.
Yeah.
You know, you're definitely seeing an acceleration of that. I think that print will never go away. And I think that people saw that when they were missing their family and they couldn't see them. Prints were a big way to have something tangible to remind them of family members that they maybe weren't seeing. But at the same time, we saw this, you know, even bigger acceleration of digital delivery of images.
Well, and people had just had time on their hands, to be honest. I mean, we saw that in the consumer part of the segment where a lot of the consumer brands, the Shutterflies, the Snapfishes, and those folks encourage people to make photo books, which, as we all know, is a very time-consuming and can be a laborious process. And people had time on their hands to do it. Actually, book volume took a little uptick during that period. That's part of the process too. So let's talk a little bit about the survey itself. You know, one of the things I thought was very interesting was the revenue report. Not surprisingly, looking on page 3 of the report right now, you had people who obviously saw a big downturn, right? 20 to 40% or more. But you also saw some people who stayed the same and increased. Now, not the same percentage, but what were some of the characteristics of those who saw increases?
So I think that some of the people who saw increases were the people who were adaptable. They could, first off, we had some small numbers of people who sold art, landscape and nature had increases because, you know, people were sitting there staring at the same 4 walls of their home and, you know, perhaps wanted to redecorate.
Exactly.
Part-time photographers, I think in some ways took a hit. I think maybe they were already, they didn't have quite the going marketing and customer base that the full-time photographers had.
Sure.
But, you know, the people that were successful were the ones who could make a pivot, that could pivot into the real estate space, that could pivot into the food photography space, that could be open to the idea of delivering their images in a way that they typically had. So maybe they moved away from in-person sales and decided to go with an online platform such as Zenfolio or Format. So I think being adaptable and being able to pivot were some of the real big characteristics of people who kind of were able to make COVID work in a way that was beneficial to them.
And across the board, I think we saw commercial growing as you know, we're relatively right to the other segments. And I think we saw photographers taking on a couple of different shoot types, you know, typically 1 to 2 shoot types. But, you know, commercial was something that didn't go away. And as Pam said, real estate definitely didn't go away. I mean, we've just come through a whole boom there, and online real estate sales have gone through the roof, right? So that also sort of added to another element that was getting, you know, we already had a fair number of real estate photographers. I think we've seen that's been an uptick. And
honestly, with real estate photos, you don't want people in them, so it makes for good.
No. And with all the realtor showings and limitations on that, having the visual representation online was critical.
In terms of generating revenue, what were some of the breakdowns of where people were making money? You know, prints, downloads, marketplace type activities. So where is that shaking out these days?
look, I would say across the board, commerce, both digital and physical, is looking very strong for us. We've added more labs, we've added more products. We continue to see high demand from our photographers to add broader sets of products with more variety from lab capabilities. That has the idea that you can have a seamless checkout experience on a mobile device, that sort of goes hand in hand with having these labs available and being 1 to 2 touches away from a purchase. So we've seen that grow. We're seeing commerce on our new platform do very, very well. And that demand I can only see going up from here, both in the digital and the physical space. So again, it comes back a little bit to what you were saying, Gary. People with a little bit of time and now moving into a wedding season where lots of people are sharing and they're on their couch in the evening and they decide they want to purchase, and we're giving them better facilities to do that from the phone. Then they're not going to go to a desktop to do that from a consumer perspective.
One of the things I think that is super advantageous for this process is the fact that so much of this friction has been reduced. Getting a print made now at a pro lab through a service like yours or someone else's is now virtually seamless, where it didn't used to be. It was a download, upload, and people don't want to just deal with it. So I think reducing the friction is probably the secret sauce to a lot of this uptick.
Absolutely. And I think also making it easy for the photographers to set this up as well, right? So there's friction on both sides. So building tools, intelligent tools to help them build price lists, allowing them to, easily select a set of products that can be displayed to the consumer that isn't a raft of things, but it's just the target for what they're selling for a particular shoot type, making all those things linked to the shoot type. Those are the things that we've been investing in and trying to bring some intelligence into the platform, so that when you're on that mobile device, from a consumer perspective, you've got the right set of choices, but it's not overwhelming. We're not asking you to do anything that would slow down that commerce activity. And to be frank, it's showing in the results that we're seeing.
Now, Pam, you're in the role of having to communicate all these wonderful benefits to the photographer customers. Has that been a challenge? Because you've really asked them to do a lot more on your platform to run their business. You're really becoming more of a full-featured CRM environment almost.
Right. And it does, adding features and adding functionality, it makes it difficult because we have a very brief amount of time in front of these photographers to communicate what it is we can do and how, how we can do that. And I think focusing on what the benefit is to them and their clients, and really turning it to, how are their clients going to love what what their website provides to the client. And, it's, as Keith talked about with using AI and introducing some of these workflow capabilities, reducing friction for the clients really ends up being something that makes the photographer ultimately more successful. For instance, the online booking capability. We had a photographer tell us that this couple had a baby born. The husband was in the hospital, and he's like, "Oh, well, we want to have newborn photos done. We didn't get this taken care of." And he was on photographer websites, and he went with this one photographer who had a Zenfolio site because he's on his mobile phone in the hospital room and could click book. And he was able to choose the time and communicate with them, and it was all done. Whereas, other ones that he was trying to vet, it was involving emails and phone calls and back and forth, and he's trying to enjoy his new baby in the moment. And so really reducing that friction is, really helping to push people through the buying process for these photographers and ultimately giving them that sale that they want.
Because I've been following, Zenfolio for a lot of years, and really, when you guys were first in the marketplace, it was like, there was the place for gorgeous galleries. If you wanted to see a beautiful gallery, Zenfolio was your place. But it seems like you've been adding a lot of some more of the back end support features.
Yeah. I think that the idea that we can help the photographer, look, they're generating a sea of images these days.
Mm-hmm.
We're helping them organize and then be selective in how they want to present them to the consumer, because the consumer doesn't want to see the sea of images necessarily.
Exactly.
They want to see the really great ones, and then they want to do something with them from their mobile phone.
Right.
So what you're seeing us do, and what you will see us do, is helping the photographers get their images online as quickly as possible, helping them organize, potentially even, rank and select from those images. So giving them, helping them with some intelligence so that they can start to figure out what they should be showing versus what they shouldn't. Giving them the intelligence to say how to price these things, how to price the products that sit around those images. And then, starting to help them find them. That's the other thing. We've been a pioneer in search for a long time as Zenfolio. We've had search on our platform for a very long time. Now the thing is, how do you add intelligence behind that search so that you can have not only the photographer find the images they want, but the end consumer find the images they want? And let's look at it candidly. Search is what a lot of people use on their mobile device right now, right? So you can see it in the product today. We have this idea of facial filtering, where you can say, this person, show me all the pictures of this person in the gallery, so that I can find, a person at a wedding, a person in a particular group shot.
Right.
That's the kind of thing that you need in order to get that friction down, have an actionable event if they want to take a print, if they want to download, and more importantly, just to give a great experience for the photographer to engage with their clients.
Mm-hmm.
Keith, you brought up an interesting point about, photographers and pricing and the dynamic pricing.
Yeah.
When we did the survey, and we looked at photographers and their employment status, it really seems, hobbyists and students, they're starting out for the art. And that's why these photographers are starting. They love the art and the creation of the images. And the more their income relies on their photography, you see a lot of them moving away from it. Granted, there are some photographers who can, keep in the arts and the landscape and the nature, and they can make it successful. But a lot of them are having to move. And as they're moving across these different genres, one of the biggest questions our customer success group gets isn't how do I do X, Y, and Z on my website? It's what do I sell my work for? What should I be selling for? And being able to, generate this and provide that, kind of a good starting point for these photographers using AI and, using some of this is really important. And it's going to be key for these photographers being successful as they go through their journey.
Yeah, because pricing is one of those areas that is fraught with peril for a lot of businesses, and especially in a service business, right? Because you certainly don't want to lowball your services just to get business because you're leaving money on the table, but you also don't want to go out of the reach of your potential customers because you're trying to capture that premium spot, because that premium spot is always moving, right? And, in some markets, a $5,000 wedding is typical, and in other spots, it's not at all.
Yeah. And we've seen that, as well, once you start getting to packages, right? So one of the things that we brought to play in our new platform is the idea that you can put together wedding packages with, a certain set of physical, digital, other services. Then how do you price those? How do you make sure that you're giving exactly the sweet spot for the market you're going after in the zip code you're in? And I think that's been seen as a real opportunity to help photographers, one, get off the ground,
right,
and then to grow their business.
You talked a little bit about diversifying, and different types of photography, but I'm also seeing a little bit of dialogue about photographers diversifying away from photography itself, like getting into DJ services and some of the other stuff, kind of being a whole, not I would say a party planner, but sort of that sort of thing. How do you think that's a trend, or is that sort of a desperate grasp for revenue?
I would say the area that we've seen some growth is around video and video services coming alongside photography, and we've been delivering video on our older platform for a while. We reintroduced it with some new features on the new platform recently this year. Things like being able to apply watermarking to videos and things that sort of apply well to someone that has an event photography business, adding video to that. And, we did ask in the survey, how many people are doing video. We're seeing a growth there. How many people are doing it themselves as opposed to hiring a third party? They were less forthcoming maybe on that particular piece of information, but we are starting to see that as an opportunity. And again, this comes back to how they package and sell, and whether video becomes an important part of that service. I think in prior years, we've seen it sort of being thrown in as it's a bonus feature.
Right.
Now it's becoming an expectation, and, the quality is expected to go up. We're seeing drones at weddings. We're seeing, right. You've seen all this, Gary, right? So where that fits and how that starts to fit together as part of an overall business, I think is something that we are really, really looking at carefully. And as we build out video services to help our photographers, that's an important part.
You mentioned drones. That was something else that I've been hearing more and more about. And that's a whole nother level of craziness, I think, from a standpoint of, just being in a venue and having this thing flying overhead, making noise. And it just, anyway, like you said, it appears to be what people are looking for. It does seem to me that elaborate wedding capture doesn't seem to be going away. I remember the trash the dress trend from a few years ago, and now it's into, capture that moment and have a bunch of stage things. It's the elaborate wedding photography was not going away.
It's not. And the other reason video is becoming important is because of the social sharing, right? I mean, everyone wants to share everything socially. Images are great. Video is also part of that. And giving that in a nutshell moment for social sharing is becoming an important part of what a photographer does for their clients, because that is the way they interact. And what we see is Instagram's a huge part of how photographers are found, how photographers share, and building social interaction into the platform has been a really high priority for us going forward.
Now, Pam, from a marketing standpoint, isn't video pretty much a requirement, like Keith was saying, for Instagram and everything else? I mean, what are you doing to support the photographers who are doing video? But are you providing like do's and don'ts and that sort of thing? What sort of customer support are you providing?
So our support team and success team is always happy to work with photographers one-on-one and talk to them about the do's and don'ts. We haven't bridged too far into the photography and videography 101 space because there's a lot out there. It's a great thing to add in. We do talk about things like best practices for including video in your galleries, best practices for selling videos, and that sort of thing. And then our own marketing department is obviously using video to communicate with photographers and clients alike, because like Keith said, that is the way people are consuming their media now. We see a lot of still images, but you see a lot more of the Instagram reels and a lot of TikTok. And a lot of people want to, if they want to understand what's the benefit of a feature or how do I use a feature, a lot of people want to see those videos. So including that in both our marketing and our product is just critical.
It seems to me like video is not going away. From a delivery standpoint, I think it's kind of interesting because, unlike a physical print or a download, you got to have something to play it on. And I just wonder if it's going to stay on your service and people have to keep that live forever, or you're going to have them download it and they have to store it. Or I think that's going to be pretty interesting to see how that shakes out.
Yeah. And, we've obviously with joining with Format, Zenfolio as well, we've seen, video is an important part of that platform as well, and showcasing video. And, some of the templates that have been developed on that platform have been, actually quite inspirational for things we can do back on Zenfolio as well. So, huge opportunity there, growing at a fair clip. And like I said, with social being such an important part, it's part and parcel of what has to come.
I think one of the things that surprised a lot of people coming out of COVID is just how optimistic and gung-ho people seem to be about the future of the industry. Especially like in the volume photography space, the school photography people are very optimistic, even though there was no school for a lot of them. They were managed to, change their processes and adapt. And wedding photographers, because even though there are no weddings, they were able to change their process. So I'm really sensing a lot of optimism and growth opportunities for the industry going forward.
Absolutely. And, whether it was weddings or whether it was dance, school, and sports, what a lot of these photographers saw is if they could kind of weather those kind of rocky times, the consumers had a lot of demand. And when things open back up, consumers have said loud and clear that these types of things are really important. It's important to them to have photos of them at that marathon. It's important for photo and video of their child's dance recital. Right. These things are very important to people. And as soon as, restrictions eased and these types of events started up, consumers had a very high demand for it. So I think that's really fueling a lot of that optimism.
Yeah. No, I agree. I would say that kind of maybe reinforce the idea just how important photography is. And it's not just, everyone's got a camera phone, so no one's going to want, professional photography. I think that's actually been proven wrong. Before we close, can you give us a little bit of update on kind of where Zenfolio is at and kind of some of the latest innovations and where it's going to be going in the near future?
Well, I think we touched on some of it. What you're going to see is us doing everything we can to help the photographer and their workflow. And that comes, recently we've been adding new high volume tools so that photographers can upload with more ease, providing desktop applications to integrate with our service. You're going to see us adding more intelligence so that they can more readily access the best image as quickly as possible, highlight it in the best way,
right,
and get it to the consumer, and then tell them about it, right? I mean, the CRM functions, the outreach functions, the way that a photographer can grow their business, understand who's trying to reach them, who's engaging with them, giving them analytics that sits behind that so that they know where they're being successful, how they're being successful. Those are the things, they may sound dull, but they yield such an important factor when you are out there doing your own digital marketing, when we're helping them do their digital marketing, and then giving them that end client experience that is great on mobile. I mean, those things all tie together. It's an expectation level. It's, let's be candid. There's been a move to digital marketing. Zenfolio has changed in the last 4 years from being, a company that has FaceTime, real FaceTime, not the FaceTime digital product, with photographers, to a company that has to digitally market and reach its photographers and help them understand better. Our investment in video is because we have to help them on a broader reach with digital marketing than we've ever had to do before.
Yep.
The same thing applies to the photographers. They have to be able to do that. They have to have the tools to do that. That's what we're going to do. And, I would say the other trend that everyone sees is more images are captured, right? The growth in actual number of images that are captured is continuing, and handling those images and helping photographers get through all those images that are the expectation that, you didn't miss the shot when you're at a wedding. So you take every shot. Right. Now you've got to help them find their way through every shot to find the shots that actually go into the gallery that go to their prospective clients.
Right.
That's what we'll do. Same with, team sports, same with dance competitions, helping them get their product into the hands of their clients as easily as possible, and then giving the delight at the end that the right images are there and they're served well on a mobile device. Right. I mean, it all sounds obvious, but it takes a lot of pieces to make that work.
Yeah, that's a lot of dots to connect. Pam?
Yeah.
Leveraging the things that our marketing team knows about email marketing and promotions and all of that, and kind of giving photographers some best practices and some tools. The product team has given us some great tools. You're going to see more of that. Automated campaigns, automated ways to communicate to your customers that there are, this is a promotion time. Go back and revisit your gallery and maybe buy those extra prints for the distant relatives. Making sure that there's great personalization in those types of communications, because when the customer opens up the email and it's got the image of their kid from last weekend's photo shoot, they're more likely to really open and read that than if it was, something a little bit more
generic,
bland and type-based. Yeah. So, really leveraging some of that stuff. And, and I've worked with our photographers for 10 years, and they're not always, taught classically about business, and they're not always well versed about business and business practices, and giving them the education and the tools to help their business be successful and let them do the part that they really know about, which is, taking the photographs and working with the clients, that kind of that relationship building, kind of marrying those two and kind of, giving them that full toolkit is what we'll be focusing on.
Yeah, because it's interesting how many people get into a field that they're passionate about, whether it's photography or baking or something. Then they have to discover they have to do all that other stuff. And then that's either a wake-up call or a disincentive. So hopefully you're continue to make it easier for photographers to grow their businesses. Well, thank you, Pam and Keith, for your time. Where can people go, if they don't know by now, to get more information on Zenfolio?
Well,
they can go to www.zenfolio.com.
Okay. Well, thank you, folks, for your time, and looking forward to hopefully seeing you in person at some of the upcoming industry events. And have a great week.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you for listening to the Dead Pixel Society podcast. Read more great stories and sign up for the newsletter at www.thedeadpixelssociety.com.